Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we are kicking off our fall 2020 season with The Night Stalker, the original 1972 film that introduced the character of Carl Kolchak from Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jason Henderson. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer, creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a winner of a 2018 Best of Austin Award from the Austin Chronicle and a member of the PEN America Fellowship, and actually just this week, a nominee for a Ringo Award. Isn't that right?
That is right. Not bad for a broke-ass cracker.
Yes, sir. Phil Coleman, Drew. So good to have you. And finally, thank you. I am totally stoked to be back. It believe it or not, our most recent episode, beside the interviews that I do, the Castle Talk stuff, was like July 13th or so. So it's almost exactly 6 weeks that we've been gone. It feels like a year. It feels like a long time. Finally, in Denver, as always, color commentary from the one and only Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
Hello, I'm so happy to be talking to you guys again.
I know. So, okay, The Night Stalker. The Night Stalker. It's funny, I'm not sure I've even seen this in 30 years. The Night Stalker is a television film which aired on ABC January 11th, 1972, as a movie of the week. In it, an investigative reporter played by Darren McGavin, comes to suspect that a serial killer in Las Vegas is actually a vampire. This was based on a book by Jeff Rice that was not even published yet. And it just so happened that the agents started sending it around, and it ended up getting adapted for this movie by Richard Matheson, like the one and only Richard Matheson who wrote, Duel and all these Twilight Zones and Legend of Hell House, everything. So Richard Matheson wrote it. Dan Curtis of Dark Shadows produced it. So this thing, coming from an unpublished novel, immediately got this amazing pedigree because it also stars television's Mike Hammer, Darren McGavin. So, okay, let's get our opening thoughts on the very first appearance of Kolchak. Drew, it was your idea that we do this series, which I think is a swell idea. So take it away. What are your opening thoughts on The Night Stalker?
Man, I love this movie. I don't remember when I first saw it. I think it might have been on Nick at Night at some point when I was like a preteen or something like that. But I really like this. First of all, this sort of Las Vegas noir horror story where you have this, reporter sort of Sam Spading around 1970s Las Vegas looking for a serial killer that later we found out is a vampire. It's a monster hunter story, which I always love those. I think Darren McGavin is great. This thing is crammed to the gills with good character actors. It's very atmospheric. It's amazing, actually, that's a TV movie because this could have worked very well as something on the big screen. And I adore this movie. Like I could watch it again right now. Like every time I watch it, I notice something new about it because it's just so tightly written. Mm-hmm. And it's a very interesting, I would call it, there's a cynicism to it, but there's also a optimism, weirdly optimistic side to it as well. That's kind of specific to this sort of noir story. Like you have a hero that can be down, but he's never out.
Right. He's always going to bounce back. Yeah.
And I also just love the vocal inflection of Darren McGavin in this movie. In fact, true story, anytime I'm reading a Howard the Duck comic, Darren McGavin's voice is the voice that I have for Howard the Duck in my head. So
that is actually really going to help me understand how to read Howard the Duck, honestly.
Well, thank you.
That's great. Yeah.
So like I probably get like, I feel like I'm front loading this with just heaps of praise, but I just think this is a truly terrific movie. And as I said, arguably the best television movie ever made. I mean, there's some stuff that can stand shoulder to shoulder with it. Like you mentioned Duel,
Yeah.
And there's other stuff, but this is a really good little film.
I think you could make an argument that Richard Matheson is maybe the greatest television movie writer ever. I mean, he's just super strong. Strong words. Good start. Okay. Julia, I don't know if that's the direction that you came from. Knowing nothing about Kolchak, you parachuted into the world of 1972 Las Vegas to meet Darren McGavin.
At one point,
I was not there to answer questions, so you just did this in a vacuum. So what did you think?
How did I survive? I don't know. At one point, he actually says something about May 28th, and I think it's probably 1972. So that was my first birthday. I was 1-year-old baby when that was happening. Anyway, I think I don't agree that it is the best TV movie ever made. I think there are some other ones. I actually am a huge fan of. Is it Fatal Vision? Is that the name of the Gary Cole?
Yes.
Helter Skelter movie. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, that one. And there's a few.
Although that was a miniseries, I believe. No, you're right.
Yeah, I think that one is just one movie, but there's a lot of miniseries that are also great. But
you're exactly right. I'm sorry.
It's very enjoyable. It is, I think, what I would consider, this is going to sound funny about a vampire movie, but what I would consider to be the most realistic vampire movie that I've seen, because it actually shows you how everything would go down. If vampires really existed, this is exactly what would happen, is that people would be like, no, we need to not tell the public can't handle it, we need to control them, they're idiots. So first we're going to pretend that you are just wrong and that you're crazy. Then we're going to pretend that that you didn't see what you think you saw, even though other people also saw it. Then when it's impossible to deny it, we're just going to cover it up. And I think that is exactly how it would happen. Like this whole idea of we know that you did, that you're trying to help, but we just can't have the public freaking out. They're just going to panic, and we're just going to have to shut this down and pretend it never happened. And the way we're going to do that is threaten to put you in jail for sticking a stake through this guy's through this guy's heart at the end. I'm spoiling the end, sorry. But anyway, so I think that was really interesting, because I was looking at it going, yeah, this is exactly what would go down. The other thing that I enjoyed was just kind of that trip down. Well, I wouldn't say memory lane, because like I said, I was only one. But this whole visiting the early 70s, just kind of checking everything out. That's always fun.
Oh, just the world,
yeah, to kind of dabble in that world. And there was one other thing that has now left my brain that I was going to mention. I'll think of it later and mention it. But yeah, I thought it was an enjoyable hour and 15 minutes. It was very fun.
Wow, that's wonderful. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I dig this movie a lot. I thought I had seen it before, but if I had, I must have been either late night or I was distracted, because I really had to get back into it. I didn't remember a lot of the, if I had seen it before. And, it's great. I'm with Julia on how everybody approaches it. And again, when I see something like that, it's a shame because nothing's changed. So this is 72. We're way ahead of that. And yet that's still
no vampires. Still no vampires.
Right. Well, that you know of, because of course they've either covered it up or gaslit everyone. So we can't even be sure of that. Yeah, it's great. I also love, this is in the vein of something that isn't done as much now, where Kolchak is kind of schlubby a lot of times.
Yes.
Which was and it's weird because in a lot of ways, that was what a report, an investigator was during this time period. It wasn't a slick guy in a suit or, how we might would do it now. That kind of hitting the beat and being knocked down all the time.
Yes.
The closest we get is, a guy who's running, doing bail bonds in Jackie Brown,
That's a really, really good point. Yeah.
And oh man, that kind of stuff and his cynicism is, works and how he operates. But this was an investigator at the time, and I think that really kind of struck me. I really like that. Also, we can go into it later, but I think there's been a lot of stuff where people try to go retro with, we're going to do this movie, as a retro thing, but almost I've never, to my knowledge, to my recollection, heard anyone try to ape the soundtrack from one of these 70s TV movies. Because there's a really specific sound or, set of instrumentation, how they
Yes.
play out, how they underscore scenes. Yeah. Now that I think about it, I wish Robert Forster had been in a in a Kolchak episode.
He actually would have been a much better new Kolchak. Honestly, he would have made a swell new Kolchak.
I miss Robert Forster.
You know who I think would be, if they rebooted this, is this going to be a strange thing? I was thinking this the other night. You know who, even though he's not an actor per se, I think he's got kind of the same kind of alternating between being smug and charming, is Stephen Colbert. I think would be an okay rebooted.
He would probably work, but he's still even he's not as kind of everyman as we see in here. You know, like he's slicker. But like in the 70s, like that was when I started thinking about it. Because I wasn't born yet when this movie came out, but when you look back at television and media from this era, you know, Kolchak embodies what people think of as the hard beat version of you know, where he's coming from. And I think that part was also fascinating to me. But yeah, you know, Joe, you know, but he's good at his job. Like everybody hates that he's there.
Yeah.
Because they know he gets results and they don't always like those results. The cops hate him because he's always under, you know.
Well, in fact, that should be our first. Let's talk about the character of Kolchak.
Yeah.
Because I do want to talk about the world because I find it fascinating. But first, let's talk about Kolchak.
Well, are you not going to give us your opening thoughts, sir?
I'm just going to go straight into it. I don't really have any.
Okay.
I'd never seen this movie before. I'm pretty sure of that. I saw The Night Strangler. So I'm pretty certain that I either saw this 30 years ago or I've never seen it. So I had much the same thought. But Kolchak himself, let's go straight into his character. Tony described him as cynical. What I love about his cynicism is that it's such a cynicism of lightness that in the same way that Ben Franklin in 1776 has these sort of cheery but dark things that he says all the time, like, oh, don't worry, history will clean it up or whatever. He's like that. The world's corrupt. People are corrupt. They do bad things. I get the shit kicked out of me all the time. You know, I don't buy new clothes. I don't have any money. Nobody respects me. I still have hope. And there have been these studies that say that, you know, people have personalities and then they have things that happen to them. And the funny thing is, no matter what happens to you, your personality will return to your personality.
Well, he wouldn't do it if he didn't have hope.
Right.
Like that drive is what makes it cool about it. Like he's got to unearth the things that he has to unearth. Yeah. And in this case, he has to unearth coffins with vampires in them.
Yeah.
He's also a believer in journalism as a pursuit of the truth, and that's basically his religion. It's his calling.
That's the noir part. He has a code of honor.
He's totally a noir detective, except that he's not a detective. He's a reporter.
Right. I mean, it's no accident in a universe where they let him sit in on every damn meeting they have. Which is hilarious.
It's no accident that they got a guy that played Mike Hammer because, this character is cut from that cloth. One of the things I really like about him, though, is that he is not 100% a likable character. He's very smug. He's very high on himself. Which is why I kind of brought up Stephen Colbert. It's because, occasionally he exhibits that kind of traits, but somehow Darren McGavin takes those traits and makes them charming. Like when he's talking about oh, Kolchak's coming back in style, baby. Anybody else, anybody else talking about themselves like that would seem like a jackass. But
no, he's infectious. Except for the people, he really is. You want to go with his emotion, and he's only annoying to the people that he's a threat to, or whose life he's making a little more complicated. But even they seem to have a sort of weird, begrudging, respect for him. Well,
he's a hell of a reporter, as it's said in the film.
You're a hell of a reporter. Yeah. So one interesting thing is he has this style that is both stylish, because he always wears he wears an outfit, a costume that you can pick out in a crowd.
Seersucker suit.
A seersucker suit, which is actually pretty good for a guy who's working in the desert, because it's very light material. He wears a straw hat, which again totally makes sense. You don't want a felt fedora in Vegas because, again, you're walking around in the sun, right? But so it's one of those things where he reminds me of somebody who would be wearing like a suit or even a tuxedo, but also you expect is maybe sleeping in the back of his limousine. Like there's a weird threadbare side to it. Like there's a hustle going on all the time, and it's lovable. What about let's talk about his girlfriend, Carol Lindley.
Oh, I remembered what I was thinking of earlier, and it has to do with her. It's the fact that, and again, this is, I know the ending, but the fact that he's going to lose touch with her because they don't have cell phones and internet. I'm like, that just wouldn't be the case anymore. Like, you wouldn't just be like, oh well, I'm gonna have to put personal ads in all the papers to see if I can ever find her again. Oh, it was so sad. But
if
anyway,
your dad left you, people's parents leave, girlfriends leave, you get separated, somebody moves because you went to war, you come back in their different house, you never see him again.
You couldn't do the 70s Hulk today.
No.
The way that works is, you could find a way to make that similarly, but the way that the show is crafted wouldn't work now. There's many things like that, but
people pay people under the table still. There are people on my block, I'm sure, whose maids are probably not, are probably just being paid straight cash and with not checking any sort of Social Security. I didn't even know what the rules are if you're running your own place. So the point is, he wanders into town. I could tell you,
but I don't feel like we need to go into that for an hour.
But David Banner wanders into town, and Sally Field or Mariette Hartley is running an orphanage, and the crooked sheriff is going to shut him down so he can somehow broker a deal with a casino that wants the land, and the Hulk is somehow going to solve this. But she'll hire David Banner, and David Banner doesn't have a Social Security number,
right.
Plus he's wanted for murder. And
well, anyway, I'm with you on that.
It's amazing.
It fits in with the time, and that's fascinating.
Carol Lindley, I just wanted to mention, Carol Lindley is such a wonderful actress. I love her. She is one of the performers in Pleasure Seekers, where she's part of 3 people, and she is so great. She plays Jean Harlow in a movie about Jean Harlow. She's all over the place. She's a sex worker. And she's not damaged. She's doing fine. She's got this boyfriend who is frankly a little old for her, but that's okay. And
they seem happy together, though.
Yeah, they're doing fine. Does something strike you about this? Not about Carol Lindley, who she's born in 42, so this is 72. So she's 30 years old. He's 50 years old. That's not what I was going to get into. The fact that he's 50, though, in my mind, I remember Kolchak always being old, but in fact, he's 50.
Which is really old if you ask our children.
I suppose.
That's the real deal. Is once you're also old, you're like, hey, I'm not old. But I work at a place where we hire people. I'm twice the age of some of my coworkers, and that happens in a media, especially in a media company.
Yeah.
But the reality is the way things work now, I don't do that much that's different. I worry about some different things, but in college, I watched Godzilla movies, played bass, and played video games.
Yeah.
I'm still playing some of those same, I'm not.
It's different if you're a parent. It's different if you're a parent.
Yeah.
When you have a 20, because I've had 20-something employees, and when I have a 20-something employee, I think of her like I think of my kids. I don't think of her as a colleague that does things similar to me. You know what I mean? I think, oh, you're like Sophia in that, or you're like Katerina, and I'll relate to them. So that's the difference. But I think if you don't have kids, you kind of get to extend your youth a couple more decades maybe than the rest of us.
I don't know. I have younger nieces and nephews who are around the age of some my coworkers. But that's but even then I have to think about, and even years ago, I shouldn't even said that, but I was in a store buying boots. And this girl asked me, "Are you somebody's dad?" Which I was technically old enough to be, but I never thought of myself as that. Especially because my mom had me when she was pretty young.
Sure,
but I was like, no,
But what was the point? Was it that you were buying for somebody else? Like you couldn't possibly buy for yourself?
I don't know exactly.
That's pretty funny.
Or maybe I was just in there buying like boots. Mostly young people come into the store. I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. I'm sure it was, are you buying for your kid?
Yeah. But
Really funny.
But it was like, but even then, I didn't think of it because at that point in time, it totally, did make sense. But I also wanted to go, man, I'm not that old.
Yeah.
But that's relative. So when when you think about Kolchak being 50, there's a time when he's super old, like as old as I don't know, maybe even your grandparents, maybe.
Yeah.
And then as you grow older, you're like, oh, well, he was 50 then this, and it's a different,
Yes. And now we live in a universe where 50-year-olds have like T-shirts that say things like that 50 is the new 30 or something like that, And
yeah, I don't know about all that. Say
yeah,
what you want.
it just depends. Like if you look at American Horror Story, Dylan McDermott is like the star of American Horror Story, and he's 50, and he has like 6-pack abs and like 1% body fat and everything. And
honestly, Darren McGavin is not in terrible. Like he's a little more punchy by the time you get to the Kolchak TV series.
Right.
But in this, he's looking pretty fit.
They have him walking around with his shirt off. Yes.
Yeah, but still, I like that he's still not movie star.
No.
Like he's still, to me, and no offense to him, but he fits the schlubby reporter kind of hang dog reporter. I think is probably a better term.
But that's
because
also
he's seen some stuff.
Yeah. That's probably also to do more than just like how he looks. It's also has to do with how he carries himself and like the way his clothes is. Like he's got a like a style aesthetic to him, but it's rumpled. His clothes has a lot of wrinkles in it. It looks worn. Like that to me, I wouldn't know that I would full on call him schlubby in this. Like by the time the TV show gets around, I would say he's graduated.
No, and that's why. But that's why I say it's more hangdog. I realize that's a little extreme as far as the description, but the difference is he really has that like everyman. I've seen some stuff.
Yes.
Look,
and you lose all the time.
That's great. Yeah,
you keep losing and you keep bouncing back. That's a wonderful. If you want people to love your character, have the person be cheerful and losing all the time. There's just something that makes you want to protect that character.
And I think it happens a lot more. I think there's a whole set of articles that could be done on that, especially in the 70s. Like this. I mean, even though he's a hero, this is the era of like Smokey and the Bandit, Every Which Way But Loose.
Yeah.
Even, a lot of Clint Eastwood stuff is that, even though he's a little tougher.
It's totally true. Yeah.
But I like in Every Which Way But Loose, he's more, hey, I've got this, not so great house. I have a monkey. Like all this, all this stuff where I think the underdog was treated different than how we see the underdog now. I think in a lot of movies, to me, the underdog is a veneer. Like as soon as they can quickly not become not the underdog at any second, right? They rise to it and then all of a sudden it's a hero. Whereas a performance like this, we really do feel like he's seen some stuff,
right?
And it's part of it's ingrained in.
And this is Kolchak in his totality. In other words, Kolchak isn't going to in the third act suddenly get a lot of skills that he doesn't have.
Right.
There's not going to be an evolution.
And I think we see that. To me, now that I'm kind of running it back in my head, I think we see that a lot less now. You're an underdog until the call to action, and then you're super cool.
So I don't know when that is. Thank you for bringing it up because I don't know when that started. Because if I think about action stories about regular everyday people, Ash in theory is just a dude, and there's a lot of humor that Raimi gets out of Ash suddenly turning into, suddenly being sort of driven mad and wanting to be kind of an action star, doing the shit with the chainsaw, and he even lays out all of the tools and stuff, and it's very reminiscent of like
once that had happened in Rambo, everybody just decided that was the coolest thing.
Yes.
But we should steer it back. But it's the same thing with like, we have all these movies where authority was, and cops especially.
Yeah.
Tons of trucker movies, Dukes of Hazzards for all of it's problematic parts now, and all these movies where you're Smokey and the Bandit. There was a time for a good part of a decade at least, even film noir, like the cops, you weren't always friends with the cops.
God no. I mean, they were part of
And
your world.
I don't know how, especially with like trucker movies and such.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious when it changed to like where Americana became
Authoritarian.
Yeah, let's
I don't
change
know.
that. It's
Well,
so
just
weird
today
to me,
we were
but I don't
talking
know.
about Okie from Muskogee, remember? I mean, actually, Drew and I were talking about Okie from Muskogee. And how that's 1970. Well, it's like right around here, I think.
Mhm.
And Merle Haggard does this song, and it's all about the good old boys are on the side of authority and
mean-
not rebellion.
I mean, the reason you have NASCAR is because people were trying
Okie
to
from
run.
Muskogee is ironic, Jason.
Well,
Right.
but
I'm with you, but
either way, I mean, we should
it was
pull it
bought
back.
by people who took it quite seriously. Well, no, this
Right.
is all part of the discussion of the Kolchak character.
Well, he
And-
also,
and,
you know, in this, he's at odds with the cops all the time because
Yes.
also he's going to call them out on their crap.
But he's got a buddy in the FBI. And by the
Right.
way, I just want to point out that if you go to 10:04 thereabouts in this movie, 10 minutes in, he has breakfast at this groovy sort of outside pool bar, and his FBI friend thinks it's awesome. But for a while, you watch them just sitting there, and when somebody needs to contact Carl, they just pipe it over the intercom. This is where he does his business, is in the pools of these hotels. But
That's awesome.
Pretty
That's
good
also
life.
super Vegas.
it's
right?
awesome. I mean,
I think
that
that's
is
kind of how COVID times have made us. Like, we're like, okay, well, I'm going to work outside because it's the only place that I can
Right.
be.
but it's so creative and it's so great.
Well,
but-
it's Vegas of that time. Like he's working Vegas. That's his beat.
which is considered the sticks. They actually refer to it as, I mean, it's the place of kind of corruption and the mob and casinos, but it's still a small town.
The thing that I find funny having, because I lived in Las Vegas for 2 years.
Yeah. What were your thoughts seeing this? I mean, I know you're
So-
going to make a point, but if you could come back around to your thoughts of how Vegas is presented.
Fremont Street, which is the thing that we see at the very beginning, where the first victim is killed by the vampire, which to me is actually probably the scariest scene. That is virtually unchanged. Like if you want to go to Las Vegas and see old Las Vegas, go to Fremont Street, like because that's. You know, I was back in Las Vegas just a few years ago. Like Fremont Street is like they've taken Las Vegas and put it in a time capsule.
What do you call it when you say, "Hey, I want to go to this part of town"? You just go Fremont Street, or
it's called Fremont Street. And that's where they're
the Golden Nugget and all that.
Yeah, like it's a giant neon graveyard. It's amazing. I don't know enough about. I'm not enough of a scholar about this movie to know how much of it was shot in Vegas and how much of it was shot in Los Angeles. I know it was shot,
Oh, really?
Yeah. There are definitely parts where I look at it and I'm like, I don't think like for example in the final scene where they're in this sort of crumbling Victorian house.
Yeah.
Those don't exist in Las Vegas that I ever saw. You have, Las Vegas, which has, apartment complexes, and then you have Henderson, which has, suburbia.
Yeah.
But I, like a house like that looks like a vampire would live inside of it. Like I never saw anything like that. But the geography of it is both cool, but it's also weird because it looks like Kolchak is like driving in and out of town a lot. Like I see him driving on, because a lot of these casinos are still there, and like I see him driving
by
past
Caesars, and it seems to be in the middle of nowhere. Forgive me, but it seems to be by itself on the strip. And maybe
I'm assuming that it wasn't as built up as it was because Las Vegas is ever expanding and changing.
You know what's on the marquee, by the way, when he drives by? Paul Anka and Joey Heatherton.
There's also one point where he drives past the casino, and I can't remember which one it is, but Johnny Carson is there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What the hell kind of like evening show would Johnny Carson do? Would he just come and do some
comedy? Sure, of course. Yeah.
I love seeing that. Like it makes me nostalgic in a way, but it's also like not the Las Vegas I lived in. But I do love about it. and this is something this has in common with Fright Night, the remake, is that they're taking something which everybody thinks of as old world, which is a vampire, and they're interjecting it into probably the most crass and modern thing in America, which is Las Vegas. And I think there's something very mythic about that in a way. The idea of this, and in a way, even though Las Vegas is this sort of ultra modern city, of capitalism, it does make sense for a vampire to be there because it is a truly 24-hour city.
Yeah.
And you could be active at night and no one would think twice about it. And you could be a bizarre looking guy like the way this guy is, and most people wouldn't bat an eyelash because you're used to seeing like showgirls and guys from Blue Man Group and cowboys and things like that. Street performers. No one would bat an eyelash at Dracula.
Yeah, he could be performing. Yeah, I could be performing as a vampire or something.
Exactly.
What is the deal with him with this vampire and the blood bank? I was confused by that.
What about it? Yeah, he robs a blood bank at one point early on.
Why is he trying to create a vampire out of this girl? And if so, why isn't he just like, I didn't get that. Like, why is he switching out
what
the
he's
blood?
doing. I learned what he's doing. I listened to the commentary on the Blu-ray that I just got. So
who does the commentary?
Film historian Tim Lucas. Yeah, there you go. What he is doing is he is getting this blood. He is putting it into this woman as a way of warming it up because he doesn't want to drink cold blood. So basically, it's actually
creepier than it needs to be.
Seriously?
Holy,
that is
amazing.
This vampire is awful. That's amazing. I wish
that
they
is grody, man. Yeah. So how come they are so? And maybe the answer is in the question, but why are they so demure about half this stuff? Like,
because it's television, man.
Is that the deal? Like that they don't want to be that. Like, why don't they ever mention that Carol Lindley is a prostitute until they ask her to leave?
It's also something I learned that I didn't even know until this view when I was listening to the commentary. The first woman killed is supposed to be a lesbian.
What?
And it's very, very, very That's why they have
because
the
dude,
the first woman.
The woman that is killed on Fremont Street is supposed to be a lesbian, and that's why they say, when he's talking to his girlfriend, he's saying like, oh, she only went out with a couple of men. I don't think she liked men. That was Richard Matheson intended this woman to be gay because he's trying to show that the victims were a cross section of humanity that would exist in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
and man, I prefer this Las Vegas in this kind of setting so much more to the Fright Night remake. I like this so much more than
I
that.
agree with you.
But it makes sense. Like the more Andrea's talking about it, like I'm surprised there aren't more vampires in Vegas because it would totally work all the time. And nobody's gonna wanna. If you were out all night, you have an excuse not to be out and about in the day because why would you be if the night time is when you do all the stuff that you do in Vegas?
Yeah, but I mean, the other weird thing about Vegas, the Vegas of this movie is one where you have these big garish casinos, but they're not that big. They're big, but you come back out and you're inside the city of those bright bulbs and all that stuff, and then you've got seedy ass, alleys and all that stuff. New Vegas, the Strip, is like 11 gallerias. It is. There is nothing. It's difficult to go in search of seediness in the New Vegas. It's plenty corrupt.
I don't know about that. There's still plenty of seedy things in Las Vegas.
Well, no doubt about it. There's seedy things in every town. But my point is, if you're like a tourist who's going to do some gambling, Fremont Street back in the 70s is the place to be, and you're in and out of these casinos and you're wandering around the streets. The Strip really, really, really feels like a several miles long guarded city, and
but it's still a guarded city where you get brochures about places you can go get prostitution and which is legal and it should be legal everywhere, but that's a whole thing.
For sure. I guess what I'm saying is
Las
this is
Vegas
more the new one's more corporate. Let me put it another way. I'm not talking about safety or morality. I'm talking about slickness. There's a sort of slickness that's not as impressive to look at, except for from a sort of corporate sense.
Well,
which is, so that whole Darren Criss crap.
I can agree with you that it's got much more of like an amusement park for grown-ups vibe. Like there was for a while the idea that they were trying to push the idea that like, oh, Vegas is family friendly, but having lived there for 2 years, I can tell you that is horseshit.
Want to hear something super funny about it? And I haven't been to CES in like 7 or 8 years. But for several years, I went like every year. And what I discovered is that if you are not a gambler, which I'm not, I don't give a shit about gambling. I got no objection to it, but it's not my thing, right? If you're not a gambler and you're not a heavy drinker, you can have the quietest week of your life. If you go, to Vegas.
Sounds like the week I would have because I don't. Really
Tony.
drink.
I mean, I'm telling you, it actually turned out to be a great
and there's
deal.
some great shows. I love the shows.
Good shows. Go listen to some guitar. It's easy,
Right.
just you can just have I would just go to dinner and then go and read and write books, and it was like being on vacation again inside of a giant galleria. There was, it was
also
boring
cheap
and
food.
great.
What you're seeing though too,
What
Jason,
I found
is you'll see the same thing if you look at Times Square in the 70s versus Times Square now.
That's true.
Not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination.
One of our friends wrote an awesome story that took place in Times Square in the 70s.
Oh God, that was grody. And so
it's really gross.
I want to say sticky, but
I mean that would probably fit. Sorry, Drew.
You were saying something. What was it?
What I find most dystopian about Las Vegas, and I think it was probably true then, and when it was true, a decade ago when I was living there, is that if you want to do anything, you have to do it in a casino. Like everything in that city is built around the casinos, and everything is a casino. Even the 7-Elevens have slot machines in it. Yeah. And that's what got to me about living there. Like I actually enjoyed going to Las Vegas and house hunting. When I actually lived there, it became like a depressing sort of
because it's
surreal
leeching off of people's addiction.
Yeah, like it's yeah, and I found that kind of sickening, which is appropriate because it's vampiric. Which brings us,
back to the movie that we're discussing. So yes, okay. Let's talk about Skorzeny. Let's talk about this monster. I do want to get to this, like the cast, but in general. But this monster, this vampire, we talked about how gross his plan is. But I just want to mention he's played by Barry Atwater, and I don't know this actor very well. He was in a whole bunch of stuff in the mid-century. But he's odd. It's really weird. I mean, think about this. It's really weird because you have a lot of scenes where he is chasing Kolchak around a building, just snarling. That's when he's at his weakest because it's weird. It's kind of just odd to think this is an actor who is snarling at another actor and chasing him around. But the scenes where he is just like throwing people around, those are great. I love the physicality of this.
It's kind of you look at the way he is, and it seems like it's in a lot of other, with the exception of like some of the Christopher Lee movies. Not a lot of vampire movies make as much use of the idea that vampires are superhumanly strong as this one. Like this one, like the only other one that I can think of is the tail end of Monster Squad, where you have like Dracula just absolutely destroy a bunch of cops. He's the Terminator. And this kind of has that same vibe. That like anytime these cops or security guards or whoever go up against Skorzeny, he just ragdolls them around like they're nothing. And that's kind of cool because some of that's budgetary constraint, because like higher budget vampire movies tend to be like, oh, let's show them changing into a bat or a wolf or whatever. And this movie didn't really have the money to do that, so they focused on what they could do, which is like, let's just have him just obliterate cops. I
love how the DA is like, That's no vampire. I'll bet you when we catch him, he literally says he's high on dope or the hard stuff.
Right.
It would have been PCP.
Marijuana, high on marijuana.
No, they would have thought he would have been high on PCP because that was the drug of like anybody superhuman of the time. You know, there's multiple things. Can you imagine?
But he says the hard stuff.
Right.
Like
again, PCP.
Yep.
That's what he's.
I love it.
But
I love the character actors who are playing all the. By the way, there's no women in these rooms. Do you notice this? These rooms where all these decisions are being made.
Of course not.
Zero.
Well, it wouldn't be realistic if there were.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, you've got female governors at this point, so it's possible.
Yeah, but not
everybody.
Beat cops. Plus, who's going to play like opposite Claude Akins?
Right. Exactly.
Like,
that's true. That's
a room full of like doodly dudes.
Yes,
man. I also miss Claude. Like seeing this, I was like, I miss Claude Akins and stuff.
Oh, he's great.
Can you imagine though this vampire, Palance and Yorga, like just ripping like those three together, just ripping it up? That would be amazing.
Because Palance and this guy both behave. If you think of like Jason in Freddy versus Jason, just sort of wade into like traffic and
that's
just
what I'm saying. And then Yorga just choking whoever running at people. That would be a great like those three deciding to go somewhere and just we're gonna rule Vegas. Yeah. I mean, I guess that would make sense. I mean, that's why but Vegas of all places still makes sense. I guess it's the Walking Dude, you know, that's why he picked Vegas.
Yeah, that's true.
Makes sense.
Although he's not really that bright in that once the cops kind of start to catch on to him, you'd think he'd be like, okay, I'm just going to cut my losses, especially since apparently he's a millionaire for some reason. Like, why didn't he just...
got all that old gold and crap?
Yeah, he's been alive probably for a long time.
Can somebody explain to me that there's a plot point that I completely misunderstood? How... It's like I blinked and I missed how they worked out that his identity was
his saliva.
Oh, the saliva.
His saliva was in the butt. Actually, you know, good on the forensics in this movie. You know, like they do their job. It's just it doesn't match up because they're like, this guy would be 70 years old.
Yes, right, and that's the other thing. This guy born in the 19th century is only 70 years old. That's the funny thing, is like, you know, now it's so much later that it's inconceivable he'd even be alive. But at the time, they're like, no, this is not some 70-something dude. This is we're looking for like a 30-something guy. By the way, you know, a lot of the guy who was talking about the saliva, that was the guy from MASH who played Frank. And
you know, before we get too far,
everybody's somebody is all I'm saying. Yeah.
Oh, there's tons of great character actors in this movie. Yeah. But Tony brought up Count Yorga, which makes me think like this movie does also feel like there's a lot of not just movies, but pop culture in general. During this time period that seemed to be about let's take vampires out of a gothic setting and put them in a contemporary setting, because you had the two Hammer movies that did that. You had Count Yorga. You had this, and then you had, you know, Salem's Lot.
Dude, Hardy Boys had a vampire episode.
Oh yeah, that's
true.
Yeah, good one.
And I you know, now most vampire stories, most vampire things aren't gothic. Most of them are modern. And you know, when we get one that is, you know, castles and people in capes and things like that, is actually almost considered a novelty. And you know, a lot of horror fans kind of miss those movies, but you know, at this time this was the novelty, and I think that's kind of interesting.
I think the problem is irony. I mean, in other words, we don't have this problem with, if you're going to do Little Women or Macbeth or something, you can go ahead and put it in castles or in the 18th century, you know, to flip those two. And people go, oh yeah, I went to see Little Women and it takes place during the 18th century, you know, and they don't have phones because it's the 18th century. But somehow with vampire stuff, people I think there's too much irony in our culture today, so people don't feel afraid to see a vampire like in a big castle. You know, so a honeymooning couple are going to stop their carriage and stay for the night in the castle. And the only way that we can handle that is if we either make it new. So a bunch of people get stuck in a new town, in a new sort of big mansion, or it becomes parody. And I don't know how to solve this problem at all, because a classic plot is a classic plot. Like I said, you can do Little Women like every 18 months. So I don't know why you can't keep doing gothic horror, but you're exactly right.
Well, this isn't me trying to like bag on these movies for doing contemporary vampires.
No, I dig it. I absolutely dig it. Yeah.
There is a lot of nods in the way, like I did notice, and this is strangely, maybe it's because I was watching it on a Blu-ray with a cleaned up image, but one thing I did notice about Skorzny this time is the lining of his coat is like red, which is kind of a callback to Christopher Lee Ape.
Well, I also like that even throughout all this, he finds, the coffin with the dirt in it. Like there's a lot of, like there's a really good mix of, we're going to ground it in vampire lore. Yes. But here's this new Vegas.
Well, yeah. Thing. And once he buys into the idea that, okay, this is actually a vampire, he's like, okay, so here's what we know. We know that he has to be staked through the heart with a wooden stake. We know that he has, that silver crosses are going to help. We know it's like, really, do we know this stuff just because he's a vampire? I love that they just kind of go, okay, now that,
because my girlfriend gave me a book that tells me the rules.
Well, obviously, this is a universe where vampire movies exist because he makes the crack about Bela Lugosi. Which, by the way, other thing that would be not charming if it wasn't Darren McGavin. Kolchak is extremely insensitive. But,
yes, you're right.
What you talking about? The luscious 135 pounds that?
Also that he makes a joke about the Bela. Well, that's insensitive, but he also makes the joke about how she's missing blood, and then he's like, Bela Lugosi struck again, and the cop has to go, her mother's over there, man.
Yeah. Right after he talked about the luscious 135 pounds. No, that's the one that got. I was just laughing. I was like, oh my god, this guy.
He's kind of insensitive, but the fact that he does name drop Bela Lugosi means that vampire movies do exist.
Oh, for sure.
So why does the police force exactly need him to say, "Hey, crosses and stakes"?
Because they're not. There's no assumption that they've ever seen a vampire movie. Because it's not like now where we have a million of them and we have cable 24 hours a day. You would have to have gone to a theater to see a vampire movie. There's no reason to believe that these guys have.
Yeah, they don't know the rules, but they've heard of vampires and they know they don't believe in them. So
well, it's movie stuff. That's the whole point. It's obviously some guy. Like, I mean, even now, if something happens, somebody's going to go, yeah, well, this person was believed in the movies or was some reality TV or video games or whatever.
And I apologize, by the way.
Our whole thing is to go, well, that can't be real,
right?
So I think it's totally in character for them to go, yeah, vampire movies, ooh, like that stuff's on the screen or in a book. Like, you can't.
Well, books are magical in movies. I mean, books are like just like in From Dusk Till Dawn. They go, has anybody read a book? So in the universe of that movie, it doesn't matter if the book is bullshit. No. Books tell truth. At least and so in this world too, it's just a shorthand that these things use. But I love it. If it's written in a book, if there's pictures of a monster and like writing underneath it, it's true. That's the shorthand that everybody knows.
I also think because Kolchak is the cynic, he has to be, he has to be the one that arbitrates truth. Like
good point.
If he believes this, maybe these other dodgier authority figures will believe it.
Well, that's really well said. I just wanted to point out, earlier I was reaching for Larry Linville's name, and I failed to come up with it, and I'm sorry. But he's the one who played Frank on MASH, and he plays the doctor here who goes, yeah, I think they use a suction device to remove the blood, because he hasn't yet figured out.
How dare you not know all the names of all the actors?
So it's really neat to see also Elisha Cook, from The House on a Haunted Hill. Ralph Meeker. Go ahead.
No, actually, I blanked on what I was going to say. Cut that.
Ralph Meeker, who also here's the really truly wild thing. In the mid 50s, Ralph Meeker and Darren McGavin both played Hammer. And so when they sit down to have cocktails at that tiki bar, you're looking at one television, one of the movies. You're looking at two Mike Hammers having drinks together. It is really cool. That is really, really neat. So, and Meeker was Hammer in Kiss Me Deadly, which is this like, really hard-boiled, violent Mike Hammer of the mid-50s.
Oh man, that movie rocks.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good. And that's the movie that introduced the glowing briefcase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much good. Man.
Yeah, I know. If we were a more expansive podcast, we'd find an excuse to talk about Kiss Me Deadly, truly, because it's very good. Because I'd like to see Kiss Me Deadly and I, the Jury together, because I haven't seen that one in a while, but I remember that also as being a pretty like
when you talk about the glowing briefcase, you have to bring in Pulp Fiction.
Sure, but I mean, I want Mike Hammer movies.
Mm-hmm.
So and that was Armand Assante. So it would be cool to see Meeker and Asante sort of back to back.
I do enjoy Armand Assante very much.
Yeah, I agree. Who among us does not? And yeah. So anyway, and also Kent Smith plays the district attorney. That's a guy that you see as a lot of like authoritarian doctor types. So they're just like really filling out this cast. But the one we haven't mentioned is Simon Oakland as Tony Vincenzo. So isn't this but forgive me for not remembering, isn't this character in the television series?
He is in the television series. Right. I think it's purely because their dynamic is so great together that
Absolutely.
Having an episodic Kolchak wouldn't really work without him.
Yeah, we need a recurring cast. And they do work really well. I think they moved the setting of the show somewhere else for the TV series, and I don't remember where they move it to, because I haven't seen it. I don't even think I've seen that TV series. So I think Night Strangler literally might be the extent of my experience with Kolchak.
How have I seen more Kolchak than you?
I don't know, man.
It's surprising to me somehow.
Yeah. There are vast gaps in my pop culture knowledge, truly.
Is this just something that would be really up your particular alley?
I agree. I mean, the Night Strangler actually helped sculpt my personality as a kid, because I saw and just imprinted on Kolchak doing research at the morgue, at the not the body morgue, but the newspaper morgue, where you'd go and go, oh, I need all of February 1926, and some guy with armbands would go and grab a whole bunch of long wooden sticks that held actual old newspapers and bring them up and would lay them out on an enormous wooden table, and you would study the papers. I was so fascinated by the world, the technical world of Carl Kolchak, and that, and that just that stayed with me my whole life. That and Microfiche, the newspaper morgue and the Microfiche. And yeah, no, never watched the show. I mean, I was a kid. I was very tiny when that show was on the air.
That's no excuse, though. Oh man, we're watching a movie from the 70s. I mean, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, no, Jason Jason never watches anything that wasn't made in the last 10 years, except everything he watches. 100% of the things you watch are from when you were a child or before you were born, a long time before.
I mean, I know where you're coming from, but it is a funny, I was a kid.
No, that's baloney.
In this realm, that's BS.
I should watch it. You're absolutely right. I should totally watch it. I mean, ironically, I have actually published a Kolchak story.
Ooh, now the truth comes out.
What? I did. There was a Kolchak anthology a number of years ago. I think it was called the Kolchak anthology.
Do you get the impression that he's making this up right now?
No.
I believe you. It's just did they not quiz you or something?
No, they didn't. And also,
there should be rules, man.
I'd seen the Night Strangler, so I knew that was.
He saw the one thing.
I'm playing. I know I just say not to gatekeep people on fandom, but I'm gatekeeping you now, Henderson.
Hey, Drew, this just shows. Shoot your shot, man.
Exactly.
Retroactively, Jason should not write that story.
Hey, what I did, because I was trying to read everything about Kolchak and the stuff he did, and I was there's no way I can take all of this in. And so I just invented a story where he gets called by an old friend to go down to Galveston to investigate a thing. So I just moved Kolchak. I put Kolchak on a road trip.
But seriously, I have been married to you for how many years, and I never heard of this. What anthology is this? I don't remember this at all.
You don't remember the Kolchak story?
No. What's the anthology called?
I don't remember.
This is why I think you're making it up.
As per our discussion earlier, Julia, you actually died 3 times in that one.
Maybe that's why I don't know about it, is because he's like, oh yeah, another time I killed your character.
You know about this story. I read this story at one of the parties.
Well,
I read it at
I believe that you wrote the story. I don't remember the anthology, is what I'm saying.
It is the book was called Night Stalker Chronicles. And it looks like it's out of print, which doesn't surprise me at all. It came out in 2005, so that's 15 years ago. And I wrote a story called Wet Dog of Galveston.
Well, I was kind of busy having like my second child at that point, so maybe that's why I forgot. But yes, Wet Dog of Galveston sounds very familiar. So the story is familiar. I just didn't remember that it was in an anthology. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wet Dog of Galveston sounds like Steely Dan or Three Dog Night, which would be appropriate for Jason because he's a big
he loves Steely Dan.
It sounds Wet Dog of Galveston sounds like it should have been some 70s song.
Like you want to write like a fake Steely Dan song called Wet Dog.
Okay, do we have any more things to say about this movie? Because we've gotten
you're right. We should probably be getting to our final thoughts. What I love is we haven't actually gone through the plot, but it's not necessary because we've hit the major topics, and I think this. I will say this:
vampire is running around killing people, and they're trying to fight.
Movie. Well, let's talk about the ending. And the movie, by the way, you can. The only place I could find it was on YouTube. So maybe there's a Blu-ray, so you can order the disc.
Yeah, definitely order the Blu-ray if possible. Also because the extras are good.
Cool. So all right, the ending is fascinating because after they dispatch the vampire, which is a good action scene. After they dispatch the vampire, Ralph Meeker comes to help him, and so Kolchak and Ralph Meeker take care of the vampire. And Kolchak thinks that he has scored, he's got a great story, but the city fathers of Las Vegas turn out to be corrupt, and they betray him and are going to make him hide the truth. And like dropping her, just sort of dropping his girlfriend into like a cement post, they get her to leave town. So basically, they really punish him very badly.
Well, I don't get the impression that they kill people that are in the way.
No, but my point is this is short of that. But they're still so corrupt that they like ruin his life, they ruin her life, and Ralph Meeker.
Well, they don't even get her like information for him so he can find her.
Right. No, it's hard. It's like dark is the wrong word because I don't even know what that.
It's like a blacklisting. It's for burning.
Yeah, it's very cynical. Though it's very cynical and dark, but it fits into this world that Kolchak is going to get the shit kicked out of him. Drew, I know that we've kind of been all over the place, but we've hit some good topics, but there might be something left that you want to discuss. So, or just give us your final thoughts on the Night Stalker.
Okay, so when I did my intro about this, one of the things I said is this movie is both optimistic and cynical at the same time, and I think about a lot of the stuff that this is influenced, like Chris Carter, and this is an influence on the X-Files a lot. And I think about that final scene where he's basically being run out of town, even though he's the hero, and these people are burying the truth. He's not going to be able to find his girlfriend, who he just previously proposed to, and truly, I think if this movie was made like in the 80s, like him packing up his bags and being kicked out of town would probably be the ending of the movie. And honestly, like the way he says, sure, I'll see you around, when you really know he means fuck you to his friend in the FBI. It would have been a good enough ending in some ways. But then there's the extra part where he's talking into his tape recorder, which has been the narration of the film. It's taking the film noir device of the detective narration. But in this case, it's his reporter's notes. And he shuts off the tape recorder, and he throws his manuscript onto his desk of wherever he's staying. And he just kind of chuckles and walks off frame. And that to me perfectly summarizes the character of Carl Kolchak, the reporter who will never, ever, ever give up his pursuit of the truth. He is down, but he is not out. And that's why I said, like, this is kind of an optimistic movie in a weird way.
Yeah.
And I, because they didn't just hung him out to dry. They ruined him.
Yeah.
And, the fact that there's that chuckle, like, really just, like I said, I think if this movie was made in the 80s, like if this was a John Carpenter movie, I don't think you would have had that.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I was thinking earlier when I was trying to find the way of explaining what's interesting about his cynicism, that he's circled around again. There's a point where you become cynical and you're just pissed off and angry. And then you can circle around again to be cynical and find the world kind of funny, and you can become a joyful warrior who's aware of how shitty things can go.
Well, I think he also finds pursuit of the truth to be the highest calling.
Right. It's joyous.
Yeah. And, that is always my takeaway from this movie. Like, I think it's a really good vampire movie. I think it's a good noir film. But, like, more than anything, I think that there's something to be learned that in Carl Kolchak's resilience that I really like. And he's not a perfect hero, but he's a good hero in that respect. And I think, Tony said it earlier, he's kind of a timely hero right now because we need more Carl Kolchaks in the world at the moment. So so taking that out of it, summarizing my feelings would, this is a movie that I go back to a lot. I can truly say that this is one of the linchpins of my own interest in horror genre, particularly, monster hunters as a trope. So I can say that I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now without this movie. Like, I really like this movie, and I'm glad that this is a good movie to come back to. I think
I agree.
I'm glad that we had this discussion.
I'm really I agree the same way. I'll say more when we get to me, because it is Julia's turn. And Julia, I feel like we've been just blathering all night. I don't even know if we've given everybody a fair chance to talk. So lay it on us. What are your final thoughts?
Well, I think I just didn't have as much to say about it as you guys, which is fine. But, like I say, I enjoyed it. I thought that it was interesting to see this character kind of be born, I guess, because this is the first episode, or what is it? The pilot of Kolchak,
it's not even it's more like it's a movie. It's a TV movie,
but it's before the show starts, correct?
Before the show, so they did this.
So it's kind of neat to see how, like, and now I kind of do want to go back and see some of the episodes, because it's always fun to see how a character gets introduced and then what happens, how they grow and everything.
And in some instances change between the initial.
Well, even the actors will change, But anyway, like I say, I really just had a lot of fun thinking about how this would go if it was real life, because I think, it's like if you look at when people talk about UFOs and it's like, oh, Area 51. Oh, everyone's like, oh yeah, there's really stuff that happened. Everybody else like, you're crazy. That's nuts. I mean, yeah, there might be life somewhere out in the universe, but it for sure hasn't come here. For sure. People are just like, that's it. So then you get into, alien stories, and it's like, okay, so what happens if in fact we can no longer deny it? And I think it's spot on that you cover it up so that people don't freak out, just like Area 51 supposedly. Anyway, but that was really fun. The actual monster is interesting. I agree that I like that they they allude to things that he can do that he doesn't necessarily do, such as move a body without leaving footprints and all that kind of stuff. But we don't actually see him fly. I don't remember seeing him fly. But yeah, we see him, throw people around and everything. And the sadistic or the sadism, I guess, of warming. That's just so interesting that you told me that he was warming the blood bank blood by transfusing it through her. So weird. So I mean, that kind of stuff, that's really clever. It's really clever to add an element of wickedness to a vampire after all these years of vampire movies that had already, because now there's been even more, of course, but even at that point there were a bunch. And that's very, very interesting take on it. So yeah, and I always enjoy seeing the cars and the clothing. It's always a lot of fun, the decor of beautiful 1972.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so it was very enjoyable.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic, and I'm so happy to hear that you liked it as much as you did. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I really dig it. I'm glad we're covering these. I like this era, and it's got so many great character actors as well. In addition to just being a really cool setting and having an interesting, I'm not sure the vampire is as interesting as other vampires, but how he operates and how they are tracking him, especially as it ramps up, like I said before, that stuff is really, really cool. But I mean, it's a Kolchak mystery, so we're going to spend time with him, right?
Yeah.
That's the gist of it. But yeah, so many actors, both when I was growing up, eventually we'd see them more, and then as we're going back through cinema history, there's so many people, you see them in roles and you go, oh, that guy, like, yeah, he's in this. It instantly, that these scenes are going to be cooler because of that.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that aspect as well. Yeah, I really, really dig it. I'm really glad that we're doing these. And you go back and watch episodes of the show again because it's been a while, so this is really cool. I'm all in, because, and it's weird too now that I think about it, because this is also the era where you're gonna have a supernatural element, but there's so many cop shows that kind of have a, granted he's a journalist, but there were so many shows in this kind of mystery solving vein, kind of hard boiled.
Yes.
From this era, it was fairly ubiquitous. Like, everybody had one. So that the idea that there's a supernatural version of this, in the same way that Dark Shadows is, hey, we have soap operas, what if we add some supernatural to that, is really, really cool.
Yeah.
That take is also really awesome. I'm hoping that, we try to do what we can do, but I hope that it's not just people who are into it, like, oh yeah, Kolchak finally, but also people going, man, I should check this out.
I agree. Yeah.
I'm hoping that we have more people doing that too, because I think it's worth it. And from there you can expand on, what if I want to watch some like 70s cop shows or 70s hard-boiled, journalist or detective shows? Because there's plenty.
There's only 20 episodes of the television show too, so you could actually binge it, pretty quick if you wanted to dedicate.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed that the movies are a little harder to find on.
Yeah,
because they were
weird to me.
They went to Netflix. Yeah, I think it was on Netflix, and then it was on Prime, and then that's why I'm a huge physical media person.
Yeah, because things go in and out, right? Yeah, no, absolutely. Where can you watch Night Stalker, the TV series? Is that also something where you need to order the disc?
I want to say I saw that more readily, and I want to say Prime, but I have to look again.
Okay. Well, we'll find out.
It's on I know it's on Roku somewhere, and I can't remember which service.
Oh, it looks like the NBC app has it, wildly.
Okay, it's somewhere
so
else.
I'm sure it's all over the place. Yeah.
Now I did notice, weirdly enough, a lot of the weird edge case. I mean, it's probably because there was a lot of bootleg stuff, but a lot of Roku must have done a huge cleanup of channels.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff where I would just go click on and go, I'm going to just watch some random weirdo crap, which I love. Huge chunks of those channels, either it became expensive, something happened, and I had to get rid of a bunch of them.
I have some background on that, because there was an article about a month ago or less where Roku made a big announcement about how they were cracking down on guys who, it wasn't about actually the bootlegs. It was actually a different kind of scam where people would launch ostensibly a public domain Roku app, and then they would use that app to be sort of the backdrop for faking a whole lot of ad views and then defraud advertisers. So I think what it was
I can see that.
When you and I would find a copy of like Master of the World, which I watched recently, with Vincent Price on one of those things, it wasn't that they were like, oh golly, finally we have a chance to distribute Vincent Price movies. It was something, we got to put something up here because it's all just, we're running these ads and we're just faking the traffic, and then we're reporting back and defrauding advertisers. So Roku figured out a way to crack down a lot of the stuff. And
it's a shame they did that, because there were a few channels that were just great to go. There were also some music channels too that I thought were really cool. They had a lot of like rare live recordings, and
Does it strike you that it's getting to the point though where there's very little that you can't get a handle on? Like, I haven't checked recently to see whether I can watch Kiss Meets the Phantom, but I'm betting that it's somewhere.
Yeah, it really depends though. I mean, that's part of running this show. I'm always surprised at when I can't find something, or what I really wish. And this again, I should probably don't want to ramble too much, but for example, I had a playlist. I found a playlist of psychedelic tunes from Japan.
Oh wow!
And a lot of them were part of like Pinky Violence movies, they called them.
Huh.
There's a whole bunch of movies, but there was a playlist of that on YouTube, and I would just go there from time to time. And I was actually trying to track down some of the soundtracks. But of course, it's like 70s movies. Some of them were harder to find, and Japan prices are really high. But I went back to it, and that person's channel had failed. But once a channel is gone and a playlist is gone, there's that I know of, no data mining that you can do that says, well, what were the 20 songs that
what was on the list?
Because I don't want to bootleg them. I just, at the time it was really convenient, but I want to track down those CDs. A lot of them are from like the Stray Cat movies, which are really awesome, by the way. But like once a playlist is gone, I have never heard of a way to figure out what was in that playlist, and that's a shame, because there was like a really good one time too that was all weird post-apocalyptic movies, and I don't think you should use that instead of paying the people. Like, I'm not advocating piracy. I did end up buying them or subscribing to services that had those, but it was a neat thing where you could go there even if you owned them and say, pull up this strange post-apocalyptic thing. And I wish I still had like, what was the list of those movies? Because a few of them were like, man, I need to hunt this down so that if Vinegar Syndrome or somebody like that actually puts them out, I know to buy that.
You're pointing out this actual thing that's I think a lot of us, you're right. You might come to rely on something like a playlist, like a YouTube playlist or anything like that, and then just one day it can just go away.
Now,
and,
granted, all that music, like as a musician, I'm looking at it and I'm going, well, I can't.
But I'm not even talking about
what they did.
I'm saying the same thing you did, which is, I'm not talking about the right to listen to the song or whatever, but the metadata of like, what was on that awesome 80s music list that I used to listen to on Live 365, 20 years ago, now that all those stations are gone, because it was an awesome list, and I would love to have some of those playlists. And then I could recompile the music myself.
I want to buy all the things, but that was how I should have copied it all down. I just didn't, because it was there and it was ubiquitous for
I'm with you.
months, which was stupid on my part. But I've kind of changed my thinking on that now, that if I see something, I'm starting to write it down or save the metadata however I can. It's strange.
Excellent thought. For me, I've been blathering more than anybody else in this episode, so I don't have anything else to add other than that I am so thrilled, and I cannot wait to return to this character next week with the Night Strangler, because I can't wait to see what the changes are. Like, if they're tweaking the world between these two TV movies and getting ready to do a television show at this point in the world of producing Kolchak, what's going to be different next week? I can't wait to find out. It's going to be fun. It'll be cool. And for those of you who have friends in Seattle or in Seattle or just like Seattle, it takes place in Seattle, and it's where I learned about the Seattle Underground, because it features prominently in that film. So let's get our endorsements, which is, stuff that you're watching, listening to, reading, just experiencing that you want to share with other people, your chance to leave your imprint on the culture. So let's start with Drew. Drew, leave an imprint on the culture.
No pressure.
No pressure. Well, it's been weeks, so like I'm thinking of all the things I have gone through over the last few weeks.
Comic pros should vote for you at the Ringos.
Yes, if you are a comic book creator, if you are artist, writer, inker, colorist, whatever, please go and vote for me. The Ringo Awards for Best Writer. am no doubt the underdog in this lineup, as I often am, and as I was with the reacting to the Best of Austin awards the few times I've been in that. I am doubly reacting to that here, that I'm even in this award. Of course, I pushed for it, but I was kind of surprised that I actually got in, because this is a national award. It is not just the one city that I exist in. So please, if you think I am worthy of such an honor, go to ringoawards.com and vote for me as best writer. Okay, now that my brain is working, I can think about stuff that I have been watching and reading and everything. Indie horror. I've been watching a lot of indie horror movies lately, and some of the standouts. I really enjoyed a movie called Beyond the Gates. It's a couple of years old now. It's got really good performances from the actors. It's a very small movie. It's not like action-packed or anything. It's very character-based. But its hook is going to catch a lot of people because it's very much inspired by the VHS games that were popular in the 1990s. So that's available on Prime if you want to rent it. Awesome. I also watched a German film. I'm not going to say it was a good movie. I watched a German film called Blood Glacier, which is like basically a low rent rip-off of The Thing made in Germany, but it's a lot of fun because all the creature effects are totally practical, and that's such a rarity these days. So I just enjoyed watching the monsters. I guess I could say that's the best movie I ever seen, but I really did enjoy it. Completely veering out of indie territory, but I did really enjoy Bill and Ted 3 came out this week.
Yeah, we watched that today.
I really enjoyed that. I think for a belated sequel, its heart was in its right place. It was funny, and it's got a Kolchak connection because I just learned that one of the writers of the Bill and Ted films is actually Richard Matheson's son. So
really?
that's
cool.
Yeah, so there you go there. But I really liked the. Jason and I were talking about Batman a few days ago on Facebook.
Yeah.
And,
I like Tony was in this one too, actually.
Yeah. A lot of, there was a large conversation about the nature of Batman. What I like about the Bill and Ted movies, and I've watched all 3 this week because that's what you do, is that the characters, is stupid and silly as they are, it's charming to watch a movie series where the heroes are so thoroughly on the side of right and completely without cynicism to them. And I think that's why I found myself really enjoying this the third iteration. I think it captured that spirit very well. It's also oddly for a movie series that's about a quote unquote a band. This is the one that was the most about music, strangely enough, which I thought was cool. So one other because I want to get more people to watch it because I wanted to get renewed. Completely on a whim, my wife and I decided to watch Teenage Bounty Hunters on Netflix, and I was a little put off by it, by the title. I thought it was going to be like too ridiculous. I say that after I just recommended Bill and Ted 3. But it's actually really smart and funny and kind of a nice update of the Buffy formula. It's set in Georgia. And what I like about it is that all of the characters are not entirely what they appear to be, and they're also none of them are all one way or the other. For example, there's the one sister that's very religious, but she's also having kind of a queer awakening as well, and that those two things are not portrayed as a.
I have not heard of this at all.
It's not getting any social media. It's not getting any social media buzz, and I worry about it because it's a weird little series. And I say this in the right way. It probably isn't for everybody. It is kind of a weird show, but I hope it gets another season because the world needs more weird little shows.
I agree with you so completely. Absolutely.
So if you were looking, when you're done binge watching Cobra Kai or Lucifer or all those really popular shows, give Teenage Bounty Hunters a chance. I really think it's quirky and it's fun, and it's got good dialogue, and the characters are, again, all of them are masses of contradictions, which is how real people are. And I feel like a lot of writing on television forgets that. It tries to kind of boil people down to like one or two character traits, forgetting that people are very messy.
Yeah.
And very, very rarely do I see shows that allows people to be messy, and I thought that's what I think I appreciated the most about this show. So those are my 3 endorsements. Be excellent to one another.
Wonderful. That was fantastic, and thank you for that tip. I will check that out. Julia, do you have anything to endorse?
Oh my God, so many things. I'm like Drew. It's been so many weeks that I have tons of things. So I am one of the aforementioned people who binge watched Lucifer, and that was really fun. I thought it was really good final season, and so I enjoyed that a lot. I watched Harriet, which is a brilliant film about Harriet Tubman. I thought that was really well done. I am in deep grief for Chadwick Boseman's passing. In fact, I'm looking at him on the screen right now because they were doing a thing about him earlier. And so I've been watching pretty much every film of his that I can.
It's a shock. That's a shock.
It was a huge shock. The fact that he was able to keep his cancer secret from everyone is both super sad, but also quite impressive, because
how would you compare this shock to, because there's been a few shocking passings where you just
it's a different kind of shock, because it's not like is it Naya
River
Rivera?
Phoenix is the one that always pops in my head.
Well, or is it Naya Rivera that died? Is that her name?
Yes,
the Glee star who drowned in front of her little child. That's horrible. It's its own kind of horrible. But this one, it's something where it was happening for 4 years, and during that time, he managed to make the most amazing work. Like, it's just incredible that he was able to rise above his pain and his illness and figure out the scheduling. And the rest of us, and I'm going to start with myself here. I mean, I think a lot of us anyway, managed to constantly make excuses about, I'm too tired, I don't feel good, blah blah blah, whatever the thing is, I'm not going to do. Here he is, like, dying of cancer and just making this amazing work. Anyway, so I've been I've watched of course I watched all the Marvel films because I just love those anyway, but Black Panther, of course, and but I've also now started watching some of the other pieces that I hadn't actually even considered watching, and they're really great. It's like the film about Thurgood Marshall called Marshall. It's not really about, it's called Marshall, but it's really the story of one of his early clients when he was with the NAACP. But and he's played by Sterling K. Brown. And then I'm watching 42, which is the story of Jackie Robinson. That's the one I'm kind of in the middle of today. And then I know Jason and I are going to watch the story of James Brown, which is Get On Up.
Oh, for sure.
So, I mean, these are all, I really recommend just taking in his library of work, because it's quite amazing and impressive. So those are the main things that I can think of right now.
Thank you for bringing up Mr. Boseman. It's such a
it's so depressing. Yeah,
it's a wonderful opportunity to celebrate it. It's a wonderful opportunity to celebrate his work, and
also it ties in well with the Black Lives Matter, because we're trying to in our household, we're trying to take in more media by people of color than we were in the past, and I think that fits really well with that, because it's all amazing work about not just amazing work by people of color, but about Black people in history, which is really interesting. So, yeah.
Tony, what about you? You got anything to endorse?
Yeah, several things. I mean, also I agree. When people were, X amount of people that I am not huge fans of would complain about something like Black Panther, or also be like, this doesn't save this or that. And I think they missed out that the difference that friends of mine and their kids, for example, and this is a bit blockbuster movie. I get why there was some criticism about, is this an important movie or blah, blah, blah. But representation still matters, and it matters across the board. And it always bugged me. Some of the reactions to the film always bugged me on that level. And, I just rewatched it because I was looking for something cool like that. And, I've also been watching the same films you were discussing. But seeing the outpouring and just having had relatives and friends die of cancer, I can't even imagine putting out that much work, going through all of that. And that's superhuman unto itself. So it's really,
For sure.
this week has been strange and terrible in a lot of ways, but that's one of the ways where, you know, I see people go, oh, how can you mourn, you know, this person you didn't even know or whatever, but it's more than, it's because it reaches more than that.
Well, and it's not fair to say that, because you do know them in a way, like, you know them for they have a role that they're playing in your life of filling some capacity.
Right. And also the representation of, you know, there are some actors who seem to be actors and actresses, just people in general, like fame in general, who seem to be on a path of an elevation, as well as truly, I mean, we didn't hang out. I don't know this person, you know, other than what I see in the media. But there are people you can see them and their works, and those are people that you hope are around for longer to really elevate things with their works.
Well, he sure gave me a lot more joy and a lot more feels than a lot of the people I actually know in real life. So for that, you know, that's what I'm saying. It's like, you know them in a way, and it's, I don't know. People just need to just shut up when they're judging.
The thing I always think about is your world is only knowable to you through what comes in your eyes and inside your skull. And so the emotional responses you have to a great episode of The Twilight Zone is every bit as important as the emotional responses you have with people you walk around with. So Rod Serling is just as present in your life as anybody else that you spend time with.
And certainly more so than like some neighbor that you don't even care about.
Right.
You know, yeah.
And I, you know, but anyway, like been thinking a lot about that, and, you know, again, about what he was going through. I mean, just watching my grandfather pass away with stomach cancer when I first moved here. I mean, there's a reason why I can't really, even though it's really good, I don't revisit Magnolia, because the parts with dealing with cancer and that are tough, and exactly how kind of that was. But on the uplifting side of those things, there's 2 films that have come out. I think you have to have a region-free player. I hope they come out in the U.S. You can get them through Diabolic DVD. One of them is a crazy movie, not for everyone, a musical called The Legend of Stardust Brothers. It's an insane Japanese movie, very storied history. I should post some things on our site about just how it came about, and how crazy getting it back into the world was. Also, another movie called Fish Story, has just come out. Third Window has done both of these, and I'm anxiously awaiting both of them. I've been lucky enough to see both of them on the big screen. Drew, I think you would enjoy both of these. Fish Story they both touch on music. The director of Fish Story also did one called Golden Slumber, which ties into the Beatles song. But it's this uplifting thing that has to do with music. Really, really great. I recommend Fish Story to almost everyone. And the fact it's on Blu-ray now is amazing. Also, I've been really digging, and I hope that it's on the app tonight, Lovecraft Country.
Oh yeah.
It's so good.
It does look good.
Man. Oh, it's so good. Just super good. I watched the first 2 episodes. I am stoked. Really great cast. It hits all the things. Like, there's a lot of hype, and it's another one of those things where I go, hey, is it worth the hype? And I definitely think it is.
Big second on that. Like especially like the first episode, I watched that like 3 times. It was so good. Like I really appreciate that they before they went like full on monster movie with it, that you spend like a good 45 minutes with the characters, just getting to know them, and then it just goes crazy.
And the writing, the efficiency, and how it's so well written. You get the characters they live, and how they introduce them, and how you know about them. Also, you know, again, the people in the show are just as much monsters as the monsters, which is very apt for the time period. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I'm sure there's other stuff. Oh, and one final thing, because I have friends who made it on the indie horror side, Pale Door. I've known the editor for a while. He used to edit the trailers for the Draft House. And it's got a lot of cool actors. The effects are really good. The practical effects I really enjoyed. But yeah, and that's on Prime currently. I rented it. But I rented it mainly, you know, I like to support indie horror. And when friends of mine are doing stuff, I want to do that, and I enjoyed it. It's got a cool, you know, it's witches and you know, witches in the Old West and robbers. It's cool. Dalton Gang meets witches is the it's how that plays out. It's
Awesome.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah. But, you know, so mine's Legend of Stardust Brothers, Fish Story, which somehow I need to get that to you, Drew. I don't know if you have Region Free Player, but I have it on
I
DVD
do
as
not,
well.
unfortunately.
I have to figure out at some point, because both of those are really amazing. And then Pale Door and Lovecraft Country.
Very good. Thank you very, very much. Gosh. Okay. Two things pop to mind that I would like to endorse. One, and your mileage may vary, all right, but there is a show called Hit Parade that Slate runs, and Chris Molanphy is a music critic, and he's been running this. And on Hit Parade, they'll spend like an hour talking about a particular music topic. So, like you spend a whole hour just tracking, the career of Madonna, and a whole hour on Donna Summer, and a whole hour on yacht rock in the last month. Last month's episode was this heavily researched thing on the genre that we have now come to be called yacht rock, but which didn't actually have that label until I think it was like 2005, when Hollywood Steve of allmusic.com and a couple of other music historians started studying this West Coast super produced bouncy pop music that was coming out of like this era from like 1976 to like 1984. I love super specific era stuff. So hearing this is just like my thing to listen to that episode that was from last month. This week, there's a really great follow-up shorter episode where Chris Molanphy, the host, interviews the guys who coined the term yacht rock, and they talk about what qualifies and what doesn't qualify. So if you've ever been like totally curious about why so many of that music from the late 70s and the early 80s, that when the Doobie Brothers kind of slid into being adult contemporary and Al Jarreau was the thing, and on, this is the show for you. So that's on Hit Parade, and it's really groovy. The other thing is that I'm so happy to be back doing the show, and I wanted to share this exercise that I did writing wise while I was gone, which is that for the very first time in my life, I tried to write a novel using Kevin J. Anderson's How to Be a Dictator or On Being a Dictator model, which is that you dictate the whole novel into basically into your computer, and so I chapter by chapter, I just dictated into sound files, converted them into voice to text using Otter, which is an online service, and then I took those and then retyped them. Basically, I cleaned them up. And I will say this: I have a complete book, and I was able to do it between July 11th and last
Today.
week. So today. I've been working on it today. I've been trying to clean it up. I think I'll be able to get it out to my agent this week. But that book came together faster than any book that I've ever done in my life. I can't guarantee it's better, but this was worth looking at. So Kevin J. Anderson has a book called On Being a Dictator, which is just all about how to write faster than you've ever written before by just using your voice. And I was really I've really enjoyed the experiment, so that's something I would recommend. Like I would say if you have to write a script, or if you have to write a response to somebody who for a job you're applying for, and they want just do it and just say it, blah, 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 and then transcribe that, and then sculpt it down. Like if I could quit typing, I would. That's where I am today. So
Duly noted.
yeah. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our fairly long return show, and I'm super stoked that we got a chance to talk about the Night Stalker. I hope everyone will be really excellent to one another, and can't wait to talk to people. Oh gosh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Party on.
Can't wait to talk to people on Facebook about this one, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.